How did you come to want to publish your ideas in context?
We really both felt that the ideas in this piece, which center trans joy and talk about the necessity of talking about joy experienced by marginalized groups, was something that is so important to reach a wider audience. So oftentimes when you publish in a journal, that journal is behind a paywall, and the piece, by the time it gets through all the reviews, is so academic in its language that not everybody wants to read it, nor does everyone have time to read a 30-page journal article. And so Context offers this amazing opportunity to write in a more accessible way that reaches a wider audience. And we really want to spread the message of the importance of highlighting the joy experienced by members of marginalized groups, and especially in this case, the joy experienced by transgender people.
So could you walk us through the main argument of your piece?
So if we look at whether it's news coverage or academic scholarship, we have thousands and thousands of narratives of trans life is full of misery, oppression, inequality, violence. And we don't really know that much about joy or like other aspects of transgender life. So we draw on 40 interviews with trans and non-binary people and ask them the question, what do you find joyful about being trans? And they had just these amazing responses to the question. And what we learn is that there are joys of being from a marginalized group, that quality of life improved for trans people after they came out as trans. And also that there were a lot of joyful moments of connecting with other people. So our work is offering a counter narrative to the idea that the only way to understand trans experience is through like understanding trans experience as always being about misery and suffering. And that there's also an important part is that there's resistance in talking about joy and being from a marginalized group. So we see that there's other movements right now, whether it's Black joy movements or queer joy or disability joy. But all of these different movements are offering just this potent reminder that there are so many other aspects about life and what makes life livable that comes from joy, and that itself can be a form of resistance.
Love that. And how do you think your ideas are relevant to the broader public?
So as Steph was saying, there is this mainstream, widespread narrative about trans people being just inherently miserable, that what it is to be trans is everyone hates you and is out to get you, and it's just awful. And it's so important to counter that mainstream narrative and make it so that folks who aren't sociologists are also thinking about trans joy. And it's important on so many levels. So it's the most important for trans people themselves, because right now, the current narrative of how to be a proper trans person, so following into like trans normativity and whether or not you're trans enough, is that you are supposed to be miserable. And so lots of trans folks who have not experienced violence, who have not experienced a ton of horrible levels of discrimination, feel like maybe they're not doing trans right. And so countering that and saying like, no, it's acceptable and wonderful that you're experiencing joy. That is part of what it is to be trans, is to be joyful. It's also important in terms of reducing discrimination and violence. The more we talk about the joys of being trans, the less it becomes okay to be negative towards trans people in terms of employment discrimination, housing, violence, etc. It's also vital in terms of family and friends of trans folks. So lots of family and friends don't want their loved ones to be trans because they're terrified of what's going to happen to them, because of this narrative that what it is to be trans is to be miserable and oppressed. If we also talk about what it is to be trans is to be joyful, then people will be more supportive of their loved ones. So all of that, we're hoping in this very short article, we can pass on bits of that people will embrace and help make positive social change.